members of UMA and people at the Sights and Insights today. So we're at the Red Hills Garden, and it is right next to Pioneer Park in St. George. So you can see our lovely little map. And we are partnering with the Water Conservancy, who runs the garden, with the museum, St. George Dinosaur Discovery Site, and to preserve the tracks that are here, that we found them all over the place in St. George, and to help them interpret them. So this is the garden, and we're gonna walk this way through it.
My name's Andrew Milner, and I'm the paleontologist at the St. George Dinosaur Discovery Site. We're here at the Red Hills Parkway track site. That's what we called it originally when we found it back in 2011. So one of our volunteers accidentally discovered a block of footprints, which we salvaged. At the time it had Animipus footprints, which are made by small plant-eating dinosaurs. And then he brought my attention to the site, and we came over and checked it out and found probably 100 blocks with tracks preserved on them, mostly meat-eating dinosaurs. And if you look at this slab right here, you'll see they're covered in all of these beautiful burrows. So lots of different kinds of invertebrate traces, probably made by little arthropods. But one of the coolest finds are these great big four-toed swim tracks. You can see here this thing has 4 digits. So here's a partial, and then these 3 larger toes right here with kind of blunt ends. We also see parallel scratch lines down the side of the toe pad. So we think these might have been made by large sauropodomorph dinosaurs. So animals very similar to the dinosaur Plateosaurus, or from the early Jurassic Cerosaurus, which is known in the Kayenta Formation. So this site is in the uppermost part of the Kayenta Formation, what we call the transition zone. So we're right in the where it's transitioning from river systems into sand dune deposits. Anyway, so we've got to deal with the Washington County Water Conservancy District to make replicas of these tracks. So we're making replicas of the large sauropodomorph swim tracks, the small theropods, and some of the medium and small sized theropod tracks. And the plan is to put these replicas in our Kayenta timeline at the St. George Dinosaur Discovery Site.
As you're walking around, you can see that there are tracks just everywhere. There's ripple marks, there's little burrows, all kinds of stuff all throughout the garden. So definitely when you come and explore, you gotta look everywhere. And not just look at the plants, look at the rocks too. Oh, lizard!
On this slab, they're not very well preserved, but there's a little trackway coming across here. This is the nicer one. This is a track type called Animipus, and they're made by small plant-eating dinosaurs, probably something like Spatelosaurus. Right, so these tracks are somewhere around 195 to 185 million years old. So this is the uppermost part of the Kayenta Formation. Just below the Navajo. So here you're starting to transition into the Navajo sandstone, which of course is one of the largest dune fields ever found on the planet Earth. So. That's like Johnson. That's from our side, I'm sure of it. These ones here.
Right.
Getting a water flow and the sediments collapsing back in on itself. So that's the underside of the bed. So there are several of these. So you're looking at the underside of the bed. So this structure right here would most likely be a tree laying down, and, kind of stuck on the bottom of the channel in the stream. There are small kick marks. Here you can see 2 toe marks. Actually, this one has a nice claw on the end. So this is the toes kicking this way. So this is the animal's buoyed up in the water and it's kicking its toes, and here you can see the claw tips. So this is an animal swimming in this direction. And then there's another one, looks to be right here. And then these long elongate marks could be claw drag marks, or possibly some kind of an object being carried by a current and scraping along the muddy bottom. So my name is Andrew Milner, the paleontologist at the St. George Dinosaur Discovery Site, and I'm going to go over some of the crazy words I use. So theropod, basically that means meat-eating dinosaurs. So most of these animals walk bipedally, so they walked on their hind legs only. You have animals, of course the famous one, Tyrannosaurus rex, but the animals that we're seeing around this time, things like Coelophysis and Megapnosaurus, Dilophosaurus, the dinosaur Dilophosaurus, which you see in the first Jurassic Park movie with a big frill on its neck that spit poison. Definitely didn't look anything like that. Sauropodomorphs, which are the precursors to the sauropod dinosaurs. So the big long-necked, long-tailed sauropods that you see in the late Jurassic and in the Cretaceous. The sauropodomorphs or the prosauropods, these are the precursors to them. So animals like Plateosaurus got to fairly large size. Track names. Oh yeah, Grawlator. So we have a little tiny footprint called Grawlator. The name means stilt walker, and it's made by small meat-eating dinosaurs. So Coelophysid type dinosaurs. So like the dinosaur Coelophysis, well known from the late Triassic at Ghost Ranch in New Mexico. We have the dinosaur track Eubrontes, which means true thunder, and that's made by a medium-sized theropod dinosaur. Anomepus is the name of a track type. Again, we name footprints differently from the animals that actually produce the track. So they have different names than the actual dinosaur. So Anomepus is a small plant-eating dinosaur track. Anomepus footprints, they often walk bipedally, but occasionally they'll drop down and walk on all fours. I can tell you a little bit about swim tracks. So swim tracks are basically formed by animals that are buoyed up in the water, so floating, and if their toes can strike the muddy bottom, they leave these parallel sets of scrape marks. For a theropod swimming, so a meat-eating dinosaur swimming, they leave sets of 3 scrape marks, well, anywhere from 1 to 3 scrape marks, with the longer middle toe, so digit 3, leaving a longer, deeper groove than the outside shallower, so the left and the right grooves are much shallower and shorter. For a sauropod, a sauropodomorph type dinosaur, their swim tracks have much broader, shorter kick marks with their toes, very much like what you would see in a crocodile. Okay, so the St. George Dinosaur Discovery Site is in a rock formation called the Monavi Formation, which spans the Triassic-Jurassic boundary. So there's a mass extinction at the end of the Triassic, which wipes out a lot of different critters in the late Triassic. So in the late Triassic, you've got all these different kinds of reptiles that are, so lots of different kinds of weird reptiles like phytosaurs and things like this. But the dominant animals on the planet are definitely not the dinosaurs. It wasn't until the extinction at the end of the Triassic when dinosaurs really became the dominant animals on the planet. So our site at Johnson Farm, most of the footprints that you see are actually earliest Jurassic, so the very beginning of Jurassic, so around 201 to 200 million years old. And they're dominated by meat-eating dinosaur tracks. So that site, like I said, is around 200 million. The site that we've just shown you here at Red Hills Desert Garden is around 195 to 185 million years old. So a big gap there from the base of the Kayenta Formation to the top of the Navajo. So